Hello and welcome to Trying Times. My name is Carmen and I'm so glad you're here and tuning into this episode. I am going to be honest for a second here. I haven't recorded in a while. I've just not been feeling like recording a whole lot. And so I think normally I record usually like once, I want to say every week, if not every other week. I haven't recorded in like a month. So to be honest, having a mic set up in front of me and headphones on where I can hear my own voice literally being projected back to me feels kind of weird. I mean, it's exciting. Don't get me wrong. I feel like I'm complaining here. It's not at all a bad thing. It just feels so weird after doing something for a while and doing it regularly and then going into just like doing it not at all and now coming back to it. It just feels very weird. But it was a break that I very much needed. I needed a break just to chill and kind of like not think. I think everybody needs it every now and then. So hopefully this episode can kind of be that for you and can provide you with some comfort or distraction. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Hopefully it can be a nice break for you though. So I just want to start by saying that obviously if you tuned into the last episode, I talked about books. I introduced a little book series I wanted to do. And this is very much going off of that. I have a lot of love for what I'm about to talk about. That is probably the cringiest segue I could have possibly had. But this episode is obviously part 2 to that mini-series. And I talk about different book genres and specifically books that I've really enjoyed over the last year or so. So in part 2 of this series, which is this episode, I'll be talking about rom-coms. I love rom-coms. This has easily become one of my favorite genres. And I just want to say, to be fair, like I never gave rom-coms a fair shot until maybe like a few years ago. And I would say one of my closest friends who's actually been on an episode before, Victoria, this is a shout out to you. She recommended a couple and that was pretty much my exposure to rom-coms. And ever since I've been obsessed with the genre and I've even managed to find a couple of favorite authors in it, which is really cool. One of which I'll be talking about in this episode. But yeah, if you want to hear maybe a little bit more about Victoria and I's sort of connection through books and how that's something fun we can kind of just share in our friendship, then definitely be sure to go back and check out that episode that she was in. It was a great one. It was cool. Got to share more about her, got to learn more about her, and we got to very much visit our love for books together, which was just great. So yeah, go check that one out. So I just want to say, for this genre, I have definitely not read most of these. I'm very much like I love reading, but it's not something that I do all of the time. I would love to do it all the time, but sometimes you don't have time. And it's something you have to really find time to do. So it's something that I've been trying to find more time to do lately because it's something that I feel just makes every day better. So I'm trying to find more time to do that now because I genuinely just love it. So yeah, I want to say that I've definitely not read most of these in this genre, but I have read a few and I honestly very well get the hype. It's a really fun genre to read. I feel like it's just a bit of an alternate world in itself. I think reading in itself is just an alternate world, but it's like taking a break kind of from your own life, maybe your own worries or whatever it may be, to do something else, to dive into a different world. And I think that's what makes this so special for me. And like I said, sometimes it can be hard to find the time to do this. I know for me, it can be especially hard sometimes, but I'm really trying to actively find the time for it. And I think it's worth noting that I'm an incredibly visual person. So anytime I really read any genre, it's like watching a movie in my head, which I think is so cool. And there's just so many different worlds you can travel into, which is the best part. I think that's why a lot of people love reading, of course, but just kind of wanted to share my piece. That's why I really love it. That's my spiel about reading and rom-coms. That's the whole episode. No, I'm going to dive into 2 books today, like I said. The first one I'm going to talk about is one that transports you into a super small town type of feel. This one's called Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and if you've recently gone into a bookstore, there's a huge chance that you have seen this book on a table or a shelf display. It is literally everywhere, and to be honest, it's for a good reason. Or so I think. I know that right now this author has a new book that came out. I believe it's called Happy Place. So I've been seeing that on a lot of displays, but I really want to focus on Book Lovers. I've not yet read her new one and I hope to soon. But this story basically focuses on a woman named Nora who loves to read books. She's essentially read them all. And this plays a very heavy part in her life as she works as a literary agent. So basically when she decides to go on a trip with her sister to a small town in North Carolina, she finds herself having a very hard time immersing herself into this very new and minimal space. And I think the funniest thing and like the biggest common factor reading this for me was just she had issues finding Wi-Fi. I think that's very relatable for many people. So it forced her to pull back from this sort of non-stop working lifestyle that she had. So she finds herself now having to explore this quaint town a bit more and get familiar with, her surroundings, at least for the next little while. And as she's out, one day she runs into one of her rivals, who is a book editor also from the city. So when Charlie, and Nora continue to run into each other, they end up spending some time together and getting to know one another a bit better. So that's the gist. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I do want to say a few things that initially stood out to me about this story. I'll say, for one, Nora is considerably a workaholic. Like, this girl cannot turn off, and that is something to a degree that I think I can relate to and many people can relate to. So I think that aspect of relatability was really, really wonderful. Number two, she isn't really someone that takes no for an answer. And I think throughout her career, she has really hardened over time and works to get what she believes she deserves and what she knows she deserves. And I think this is something that's, again, very relatable for many. And then the final thing I would say is that with the setting of this book, switching from a busy and loud city to a super quiet and small town was interesting because it really changed Nora's perspective in some ways. And it forced her to be still as opposed to on the move all the time. So I think it was really interesting to kind of have that sort of wrench thrown in for her. It forced her to be in a very different state from what she's used to. So I like that. I liked all of the different aspects of her life and how they were displayed and the relatability of it all. Because I think a lot of people out there, especially a lot of women, can definitely relate to that. I think for me personally, I took away that Nora was the type of character that could potentially represent many people, which is why I focus so heavily on the relatability aspect of this book. I think in seeing how she is, there's a certain kind of comfort in that. And again, this is something so many people can just maybe feel is more personable. Maybe these type of traits make a reader feel more seen. And I just want to add in here that I know Emily Henry has many other amazing books, kind of like what I just said before I got into this one. But this is the very first one by her that I have read. And honestly, her writing it has like this very natural and specific type of empathy to it where characters legitimately come to life. So I think if you manage to find an author that you really enjoy reading from, it's unmatched. And that's kind of something that I think many people feel with her writing. So honestly, after reading Book Lovers, I could understand the hype. I could understand all of it. And I can't wait to read more of her books. So I feel like in describing my time reading this book, I said relatability a million times. I know you probably heard it and you're just like, oh wow, okay, another one. But there generally just is the strong quality to her writing that really gives that reader that vibe that's just very comforting and is, I don't know, it feels cozy almost in a weird way. So yeah, if you've seen this book or you've heard of it and you want to read it, let this be the sign that you should absolutely read it because it's great. I can't lie. The next book I'm going to talk about is one that I have been wanting to pick up again to read for a second time now, as if one time wasn't enough. But honestly, it wasn't. I loved this book. So this one is called The American Roommate Experiment by Elena Armas. And this book was released after her debut, which was The Spanish Love Deception. Also an incredible book. If you've not read that, I would 110% recommend reading that. So that book focuses on a woman and her love interest. And now this book focuses on her best friend and another person. So it's not totally necessary for you to read that one before this, but I would recommend it. So do with that what you will. The main character in the story, though, is Rosie Graham. And Rosie has a handful of secrets that she's grappling with. One of the biggest probably being that she quit her job that was quite well paying to become a romance writer. And I think the biggest issue that she faces here is severe writer's block, which is obviously the worst case scenario. So in the midst of her feeling creatively very, very stuck, her apartment ceiling basically caves in due to water damage. I don't know why that made me laugh. I'm not laughing at that situation. I'm laughing more so because it's just like when you're reading a description of a book or a summary, especially rom-com, I feel like there's a lot of chaos and it's just something that always cracks me up. I don't know. it's just the way it's written. I'm not laughing about that. That's terrible, but still. So basically, while she's feeling very creatively stuck, her apartment ceiling caves in due to water damage and things just keep getting worse for her. So she decides to crash at her best friend Lena's place. Lena is the lead in The Spanish Love Deception. So while Lena's out of town, Rosie decides to go stay at her place. She has a spare key, but she fails to realize that Lena had already lent her place to her cousin who's coming to stay in town. So when Rosie and Lena's cousin Lucas cross paths, there's a bunch of chaos, but literally in the best way possible. If the title doesn't say it enough, then I will. The story basically focuses on the two of them getting to know each other better, living together, and without any spoilers, I can say they get along very well. So with that, I'll just say this story was adorable. I can't lie. After reading The Spanish Love Deception, I had pretty high hopes for this one, and it fully lived up to the hype. It was so good. Hence why I want to read it again. It was full of romance, obviously, a lot of charm, amazing comedic relief, and also a bit of nostalgia. So if you're a fan of Elena's other book, this will be really, really great for you if you've not yet read it. All I can say, though, is there is some very real and cringy moments included in the story, but they balanced out so nicely with, like, very romanticized and not fantasy, but just very, like, I guess, curated moments. So I feel like having both of those, it balanced out really nicely, and I just loved it. And it was, of course, in part not super realistic, but I found that including some embarrassingly realistic moments really helped to make this feel more human. So all in all, go read this, please and thank you. That's really it for the two books that I was going to talk about today. I know there are so many other amazing rom-coms out there. There's so many others on my shelf that I could have probably done a whole series, like 15 episodes long, of just talking about some of those, and there's enough to talk about, but I feel like I wanted to highlight just two, and I didn't want to give too much away about the story. So I hope this was enough of a factor for you to go read the book and to go get the book if you've been wanting to. So yeah, go do that. But on the other hand, if you have read either of these books or both, please tell me what you thought, because I'd love to talk some more about them. So to chat more about them, message me on Instagram at the Trying Times Podcast, or leave me a voicemail by clicking on the link in the episode description. That's everything from me today. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you, and we'll chat again soon, okay? Bye.